Good morning. I'm honored to be here. Ken, thanks for the invite. It's a pleasure to be back in front of the leadership team. This is the first time that Danny and I have ever done the values and beliefs as a team. It's 14, 15 years, so this is a true moment in time. We've had this as a 10-year to-do list at least, so hopefully it'll work out. A couple of things. Ken, I want to give this to you. I was going through the arsenal and as we talk about some of the things we did. One of them was, we'll talk about it in the A's and B's, wrote down all the things about the company. This goes back, this is one of the first sheets. I said, there's no reason this should be sitting in my house that'll show entrepreneurship, simplicity, customer passion. I own the problem, all the stuff that were some of the genesis, so I thought maybe you'd be entertained by it. Okay. And one of the count before I start driving over here, I started to say, well, what did we do differently? We're going to talk about the culture and the values and beliefs. And then the other thing we did, which I've never seen another company do, which is appropriate for today, is we hired leadership before revenue. I've still never seen another company do that. We didn't read it in a book. So the first 8 people, which we'll talk about here, and then went to 20, we had 0 revenue. And why is that important? And that's important because we didn't build a company just for the short term or gain. Normally you go out and you get a specialist, you get a salesperson, you cut corners, you get your first order, and you keep costs as low as you can. And Dan and I made a decision very early on that we wanted leadership, which is what you are here for this entire week. And great leaders obviously attract great people. Knit that together with great culture, and bam, you got Convergint. So I just want to say I would challenge this group as we present this to carry forth our culture, because I don't worry at all in my new role about growth or revenues or any of that kind of stuff. I still worry about the culture, and that the V's and B's are being carried down from the leadership. If everything rises and falls on leadership. So if you're not carrying this torch, it's not happening. I was talking to Steve in the back with our newest acquisition. So that's just some opening comments for me. Who's Convergint? We're now obviously a global player. We are, you're going to hear us say at least 1,000 times today, a service provider. But we crossed over that 2,000 colleague mark on July 27th. That was a monumental time for us. 2,000 colleagues is a big deal. It took us a little over 10 years to get to 1,000, and then a little over 3 years to get to the second 1,000. We are the largest independent systems integrator now in the world. We've been rattling around the top couple and before we became this large company that we are today, so we're proud of that. We started the company right from the get-go to be a service provider, and we looked at service as the broadest perspective. Service from the time you got a salesperson, whoever called them on the phone, installing the job, not just service aftermarket, but the entire process is being service. So when we set up this company and we went out and got products, back in the early days, lots of companies, and still to this day, are selling proprietary products. They'd have a couple other arsenal products, and they'd go out and say, buy our product that we manufacture. And so we came up with this very early on, a tagline some people remember, it's all about choice. We sat across from our clients and said, what are your needs? Tell us what your needs are, and we're going to align a product with that, and then we're going to compete on service. And so we literally say, we don't want the product exclusively. We want other competitors to have it, and if you're not happy with our service, here's 3 or 4 other competitors in this city that'll do it for you, because we're going to compete on service. And if we were wrong with that strategy, our entire company would have failed. We still compete today on service. That's the main reason we're growing. So everything here, right from the get-go, we built a company to do large, complicated systems. Even though we had nothing, the culture, the infrastructure was all about, doesn't matter if the Boeing comes from Seattle or Capital One comes from Richmond, this is a win for the company. And our competitors had trouble with that. They had silos, they had VPs in charge of P&Ls, and they don't share resources well. And we built a company to do that right from the scratch. So if you walk away with nothing from Dan and my presentation, it's to be the #1 service provider.
Okay, a little bit on the history in terms of the growth. When you look at the chart, what the chart is really showing is the revenue. So we started back in 2001 with basically 0. We had 0 people at the time, we had 0 customers at the time, and we had 0 revenues. And so the green, as you go up the chart, the green represents reality. So that's the actual numbers as they've occurred. One of the things is we had put together a 7-year business plan, but when we came to the end of 06, we had said, the organization needs a vision. They need a challenge, they need a goal. And so back then we set in place what we called 2-10-09. Double the company, put 10% on the bottom line, and do it by the end of 09. So that's what's represented by the yellow bars that are here. That was the goal, and that was done at the end of 06. The only thing we knew for certain was '09 was going to come. And what we didn't know was '08 and '09 would be some of the worst financial times in the world, you know, going back to the Great Depression. And then you could see what the organization did. The company really came through and was able to actually exceed that goal throughout that period of time. And then in 2009, we basically said the same thing, is that we need another goal. We want to double the company again. And so that's where we came up with the Vision 360. And so the blue lines represented, this was done at the end of '09, the blue lines represented what that goal was. And the goal was to take the organization, which was $185 million back at the end of '09, and double it, which would have really been 330, and we went to 360 million with that. We were 165 million, we went to 360 million. And so you can see in 2014, we actually beat that number again. I think we did a little bit over 400 million in 2014. So we said, well, we've done it a couple times, we need another vision, we need to throw something out there, we need to double the organization again, and that's what we refer to today as X2. And so you can see with the red bars, takes the organization to roughly 720 million by the end of 18. And and actually the first year was in there in 14. In 15, we're gonna actually exceed our numbers well. So we're well on the way to achieving the goal of doubling the company again by the end of 2018.
There's not a lot to say about this slide other than we're completely humbled. We're proud of what the companies are on this slide. Almost any sector that you pick, we have one of the blue chip people now that are in that space. Technology, petrochemical. We started with Capital One and Boeing, and Schlumberger was early on, and Hewlett Packard, and that, and Apple, and Aon, and Corning. So when we're out in front of clients and our salespeople are in front of clients, we bring out this slide and we literally sit there and say, these are people that have entrusted their business with us, in many cases on a global scale. That's a powerful slide that other people don't have, and it also shows how powerful our company's been over a long period of time. We've not lost a strategic customer since, to my knowledge, since I've been here. And that's, I don't think there's anybody else in the industry can say that. So people that have aligned themselves with us are still clients of ours today. And they have options, as we brought up in the opening. They have options to other people, and they're selecting us for our service. So we're very blessed here.
So our original vision was to be the best service provider in North America. But as Greg talked about, when you look at some of these accounts, these are global accounts. And for many years, they continue to challenge us and to push us to expand the organization on a global basis. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but in 2012, we finally started that expansion. And today, we can actually service customers across 75% of the globe. Most of it is in the northern hemisphere. But the other interesting fact of it is that it's 75% of the population, but it's 84% of the GDP across the world, where we either have direct capabilities where we can service customers, or we can service them through what we call LSPs, or local service partners. But more and more, we continue to build out that platform so that we can have convergent resources, clear across the globe and servicing the customers on the previous slide. We're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk a little bit about the timeline. So we showed you the timeline on the revenue side, but now we'll give you a little bit of flavor of the history to it. Greg, we'll start that.
Yeah, I get the privilege of going back to January 1 or January 2, 2001, a very snowy day. The story before that we haven't talked about publicly, I think I was thinking about is when Deanna and I originally started it, we flew to Seattle, you'll remember this, and it was a blizzard, snowing like crazy, and we're standing there looking at the terminal, and every flight was canceled, and all of a sudden it went ping, boarding. We kind of run to the gate, kind of thinking, should we get on this plane, because no one else is flying. We ended up flying to Seattle to meet what we thought were going to be our investors in the company, but it didn't turn out to be them. But at the same meeting, it ended up being the company that funded our company, which was pure luck, lots of things going our way. So we ended up starting in January 2001 with nothing, just the two of us in a very cold basement. Most of the time, my memories are having gloves on while we're typing a business plan. We had a friend of ours that gave us, because we were very cheap, gave us space in his basement, and we didn't pay him anything. We didn't pay him any rent, but we did give him ownership, which he's thanked us for since then. It's paid him way more than we would have paid at the time. So it worked out good for him. so I got that going for me, which is nice. If you understand. The big day for us was June 18th in 2001. Danny and I had gone out and gotten the capital at this point in time. We got some crazy company to invest a very large amount of money into us that gave us control of the company. That was the key part. We had to have control of the company and how we were building it. So 8 courageous leaders came down into the basement of this house, left very comfortable, cushy jobs in the corporate life to help us build what is now Convergint. Had a little champagne, celebrated. We opened 5 offices on that day, and we didn't open it based upon any marketing strategy or New York has got the best opportunities. We opened it based upon leadership, people. We went to Portland because Sean Terrell was awesome. We went to Seattle because Jeff Rogers was awesome. We went to Dallas because Jim Botwell and Mike Runce were awesome. We started in security because Tony and Barry were awesome. And so we started Chicago, Seattle, Portland, Dallas, and Houston on no other premise other than leadership and people. So why would you go to Portland before you go to New York? It makes no sense, right? We didn't get to New York for what? 8 years, 10 years? Because it's all based on people, which goes back to our culture. So if somebody tells you we need to be somewhere, in our case, which is no different than some of the acquisitions, it's people. Big day, August 23rd, 2001, we received our first order. Couldn't believe it that someone would actually give us an order, if you want the truth. We had nobody to install it. We had nobody really smart at that time at all. We had a bunch of leaders, and so Mike Kuhn and Ben Nykirk secured a $10,000 order with Conroe Independent School District. And they sent us pictures of it, and I can still remember we'd all sitting, back then even, we used to get emails that would ping and come across whenever we got an order in the company, and it would be, one was show me the money on the service side, and the other was yabba dabba do. And so you'd open an email, and we're all sitting about 6 feet from us, so you could hear it. And when we got this order, Mike and Ken had to put it in, or Mike and Ben had to put it in. And Ben's an ops guy, thank goodness, because Mike didn't know anything. And so Ben installed it, and the big deal was the principal wanted them to take off the whale off their wall. And they described it as having like 10,000 staples on it. So they had a scissors lift, they took down this whale, principal satisfied, get a little $10,000 order, we're ecstatic. And that turned into a $13 million plus account for us. One of the largest accounts in our first 5 or 6 years. Started our Houston business on the K through 12 market. And you never know when that's going to come. Massive change in our company that Dan and Wally led up in Canada. We acquired INET, which was transformational for our company, quite honestly. Peter Brown had built a company, I think from 83-ish, early 80s. And we acquired it, which brought us credibility in Western Canada, a market that was really growing, brought us in the petrochemical market, brought us in the school market, brought us people, and we never looked back. Canada has been an enormous provider of revenues and profits and cash flows to our company, and it all started with 2002, and the best part of the story is Peter Brown's still with us and is leading some of the key initiatives in Western Canada after. The next year was our big day, was June 2002. We closed down our company to do this Convergint Day, which was a unique idea at the time. And what's interesting, you got to remember, we were losing money like drunken sailors at that time, bleeding red. We had no chance of getting out of red for a couple of years, but we shut down the company. And as you all know, the way we make money in our company is you charge jobs, you build jobs. So we didn't do it on a Saturday, which lots of companies say, oh, we're going to go over to this nonprofit and help, and maybe it wants to come by and volunteer. We closed the company down, and I believe it created this, like a truth statement that this company really believes in giving back. Here we aren't making any money, we're very young, and from that day forward, we've always closed down the company on company time, revenue, etc. And that was a monumental day for us. And then in December of 2002, we closed that year with 23 million in bookings. This is 18 months after we started. $23 million in bookings is not shabby from scratch. 10 offices and 140 colleagues, 40-30. We were already credible, in our opinion, in 18 months, and that was a testimony to our chance, taking risks with the leadership, because, again, we only went to those offices because we had leadership, and it started our ball rolling.
So we move on to 2003, and one of the highlights in 2003 is we secured our first, what we call at the time, were strategic accounts. And today we know them more as global type accounts. And one of the first ones was Capital One, which was in Richmond, Virginia. Now, we didn't have an office within 700 miles of Richmond, Virginia. The closest we were was in Atlanta. But actually, Greg and Tony were involved in the Capital One. What was so cool about Capital One, when they gave us that order, they baked a cake. And they had their values, and they had our values and belief, and they put that on the cake. And that was a very powerful story, a very powerful testament to the culture of not only our organization, but theirs, and how culturally that we were able to work together. Now, we did that was back in 2003. We renewed the contract once a few years ago, and then just this past year now, we've again renewed that contract. So we've had Capital One since 2003, took it away from one of our major competitors who just was not delivering the consistent service that they were looking for. So that was a huge win for the organization. In 2004, and keep this in mind, right? We keep talking about snow. There's something with Convergint and snow. So when we started, that first picture was actually it was the deck in the back of the basement, and it was a snowstorm. Go to Seattle, it's a snowstorm. We move into our second building, actually our third facility, which is down the block. We did that in 2004. And it was a 10 or 12 inch snowstorm the day that we were physically moving into the place. And one of the first major air handling units quit on the day that we moved into the place. So we were right back in the same boat we were in the basement. We were freezing until we were able to get the air handling unit fixed. But it was a pretty good year. We went from the 5 offices that Greg talked about when we opened in day 1 to 10 offices, and we doubled the number of colleagues. And we also went to 57 million in bookings. So you can see, if you remember that curve, it starts to grow fairly quickly. In 2005, one of the key periodicals in our industry is SDM Magazine, and they do 2 things. They do a bunch of things, but 2 key things that they do is they rank the largest systems integrators, and then the second thing is they pick an integrator of the year. So in 2005, we came out on that list, and they ranked the top 100. At that time, we came out on that list as number 14. So keep that in mind, because we'll come back and talk about it. Greg, in the beginning, in the summary, talked about, we are today the largest independent integrator that's out there. The people that are above us are associated with manufacturers. But today, we rank as number 4. And the 3 above us are large, multinational, multi-billion-dollar companies that have been in business over 100 years. And we're relatively young at 14 years. We also picked up our first large multi-million-dollar project. It was a $5 million project up in Calgary called the Law Courts. And it was a new court building that they were putting up in downtown Calgary. And that was a significant project for us. It really put us on the map. And going back to that acquisition, without the acquisition of INET, we would not have been successful in securing that particular project. Also in 2005, we started to receive some recognition. And one of them was from a company called Frost & Sullivan. It was a Customer Service Leadership Award. So going back to the beginning, our whole focus and the whole differentiation for Convergint was on the concept of service, being the service leader. And Frost & Sullivan in the year had looked at a number of the integrators, and they chose us as the best integrator in terms of that service focus. And again, it's very early on in our career. The other award that we got that year, which is the first time, and we've been on this honor roll since 2005, is Companies That Care. And Companies That Care is a local Chicago-based organization, and they focus in a couple areas. And one area is they focus on recognizing companies that spend the time to give back to the communities and help out those that are in need. The other thing that they focus on are companies that focus on their colleagues and work and support and develop their colleagues as well. And this is something that Greg was involved in it, Leslie today is involved in it, and a number of people throughout the organization have participated on advisory boards and in mentoring programs with Companies That Care. In 2006, that's where we talked about early on the challenge of 21009. We put that in place. And at that same time, if you remember back in the recession, and one of the things we did in 2009, at the end of 2008, when we were kind of in the heart of the recession, we had actually coined a term. Actually, we stole part of it from one of our business partners, but the term was, we chose not to participate in the recession. And while our industry was contracting, and it contracted 10 to 15% per year in 08, 09, and 10, Convergint grew 21% per year right through the recession. So I guess the slogan worked that year as well. And then in 2007, going back to SDM, we were recognized as the Integrator of the Year. And so that was the first time that we were recognized as the systems integrator of the year. And again, keep in mind, they look at hundreds of different integrators for that award. And here we were just in 6 short years to receive that award. And we finished 2007. That picture is actually our first sales conference with the sales team. But you can see we went from 10 offices in 4 to 20 offices in 2007. 125 million in bookings and 570 counting. So pretty successful year for us. That's Nate, Greg.
Yeah, we'll start actually with 2007.
Yeah.
I think Danny mentioned we started to get. We didn't seek press. In fact, we avoided it. We don't have anybody that does that. So the only time we really responded was if we thought it was good for the company. And Cranes is a Chicago-based magazine, very credible in the Midwest actually, and they ranked and still do rank the fastest Chicago-based companies. And I remember Danny and I getting interviewed, and so we said, so, you know, how did we turn out? We just thought maybe we were 10th or 15th or 20th, so she was like, you guys won it. And there's Potbellies. Y'all have Potbellies nationally. It's a major chain here in the Midwest and stuff. I remember going over people with it. We had outgrown some very significant companies here in Chicago. So it gave us a little credibility. And then you look in 2008, Linnell and EST are 2 flagship brands on the fire and security side. We were recognized as their largest partners worldwide. Here we are, this what we thought still a growing company, and we were already their largest company or provider worldwide. It gave us a lot of credibility. So when we're now going back, marketing ourselves to these North American clients, we're sitting across the table saying, we're the largest. We built our entire company around you in service. It was a tremendous win for us. Danny mentioned that we choose not to participate, and we stole that from Barry, but it worked. It really worked. We sat there and said, I don't care if the world is crumbling. We were a relatively small company, we called it at the time, so we're not going to sit and use that as an excuse that the world is ending. We're making you as leadership accountable for delivering results, and we're just going to ignore it, and I do believe it worked. We also got some recognition from Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, which was nice in 2009. I think that gave us a credibility statement that our company was now audited is the wrong word, but people from that space that came in, looked at our company against all these other companies in the Midwest and recognized Convergint as the best. That was a nice piece of recognition for us. Now we fast forward a couple years past what Dan was talking about. We're now 800 colleagues, 24 locations, and 10,000, Dan went through and collected it, 10,000 independent customers that we can now sell to. So when I sit here and we talk about our challenges about Convergint and whether we can grow or not, I just don't get it. Every customer is out there has another reference that they can give to us. And back here, we were getting 100% new customers. We didn't have anything to start with, right? We don't have any place to sell ads and upgrades back in the early days. So every client was a new customer. So I don't even know what the number is now. Let's say 50,000, 75,000 different touch points that we can grow from. And then a big day for us, this is a picture of the National Sales Conference. So you can see now the National Sales Conference in this picture has taken off. It has its life of its own and it continues on to this day. But the other picture here, which is about desire, we hit $1 billion in company-to-date sales. That was a really monumental day for us. We look back where we started from, and we don't reflect back. I would say that's not a strength of Dan or mine. Maybe it's a strength. We only look forward. We never spend any time looking back, because a local Chicago player took his rearview mirror out this week in his car, Jimmy Butler, because he doesn't want to look back. And his whole thing is looking forward to the future. I'd say that's genetically in Dan and my makeup. But when we paused at that time for $1 billion, it took us about 10 years to get to $1 billion. It took us less than 3 years to get to the second billion. And now our team will get to $1 billion every 2 years or less. So we're on a pace at this point that's pretty impressive. But at the same time, there were a lot of challenges. So turn to Dan on the next set.
We'll just wrap up. So in 2012, if you remember SDM Magazine in 2007, we were again Integrator of the Year in 2012. You're only eligible to be Integrator of the Year every 5 years. They don't want the same company on year after year, otherwise I think we might be on it a few more times. So I'd expect we have another 2 years until we get to 2007, and hopefully we'll be picked again. 2012 was also the year that we brought in KRG. KRG, our financial partner. Now we've always had a financial partner. As Greg indicated in the beginning, we got strategic money out of the UK actually, and they helped us start the company up. And then they were bought out by a little company called Honeywell. If you you guys know that one. And then we were able to take them out, and then in 2012, we brought in a financial partner, which is KRG Capital. They're a private equity group out of Colorado. And the significance there was, as well as we were doing, we needed to even quicken the growth of Convergint and the expansion of Convergint and get to a global player if we were going to keep those key strategic customers. And so that was one of the key reasons why we brought KRG in. It's been a very good decision, but it's been a fun decision. They're actually fun people to work with, and you know, the bulk of the people aren't impacted in the organization. There's a number of us that deal with them on a regular basis, and they're just great business partners, and they've been helping us fuel the growth of Convergint as well. So in 2013, as a result of bringing them in, we added an acquisition strategy to what we were doing. So we acquired, as Greg said, we acquired iNet in 2002. In 2007, we acquired a very little company in Denver, which has now grown up as well. But in 2013, we made 3 acquisitions. One of them expanded our footprint on that global basis. So as we saw in that earlier graph, the Asia Pacific. Today we've got good presence in Asia Pacific. But we also bought a company called FSC up in Canada and QSC down in Florida. We had finished the year with over 1,500 colleagues, and we were up to 44 CTCs. And then 2014 comes along. We talked a little bit about the X2 vision, and we set out that vision to double the company again by the end of 18. And now we finished up last year with 1,748 colleagues, so we grew a little bit over 200 colleagues. We're in 9 countries, 50 CTCs, and a little bit over 400 million in revenues. We were 408 million in revenue. And then we get to this 2015 currently. So there you can see that the sales conference, they continue to get bigger year after year. They continue to grow, but very significant. On July 27th, we hired that 2,000 colleague, as Greg had talked about. And we continue to hire roughly a person a day somewhere throughout the world. So it's a pretty fast pace for our HR group and our leadership group to bring in the new colleagues, to develop those colleagues, and to keep them motivated and productive. And so in 2015, then we continued our expansion. We bought a company called Beacon Security in the UK, and that brought us presence to the UK and to Europe. And then in Boston, we bought a company that was called GS Security in Boston as well.